So, welcome everybody to the Writers Bridge Ask Us Anything holiday party. We are so glad to have you with us here today, regardless of what your personal holiday celebration is. And if you are currently going through a family visit, we want to encourage you that your Writers Bridge time is a totally valid excuse to shut the door against your beloved family for at least an hour and 15 minutes. Because after this, you need time to process, you need time to think about it all. If you're here for the first time, we call it the Writer's Bridge because we are all about building author platform, but a platform is a thing that you stand up on and yell at people from, whereas a bridge is a two-way street on which you talk to your readers and your readers talk right back to you. Ashley, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about whatever you guys want to talk about. We received a bunch of questions in advance, so those are the ones we're going to start with. But please, we'll be watching the chat. Drop in any other questions that jump up. Remember, even if it seems like a really basic question or something that's really specific to you, I'm sure other people are going to be wondering about it. And Allison and I both know how to expand upon it so that it can apply to a bunch of different situations.
And if you want to ask your question, you can either type it into the chat, or if you want to ask it live, you can use the hand raising function and we will call on you and unmute you and you can ask that question live. So let's start with some questions that we got in advance. Summer asks, I have noticed that some authors send out an automated direct message via Instagram anytime they get a new follower. Should I be doing this as well? Do you guys do this? I do not. And I find automatic messages either on Instagram or on Twitter to be tedious and they feel fake to me. They feel to me like someone's not really involved, and I would actually rather hear nothing than get a fake message. What I do is if I get a new follower on Instagram or Twitter, I click through to their feed, like a couple of photos or a couple of tweets, write a comment or a response if I have something to say, because number one, this lets me decide, do I want to follow this person back? Are they, doing stuff that I think is cool and interesting? Are they another writer? And this also lets them feel like, hey, Allison saw that I followed them. She's engaging with me. She's letting me know that I know she's here. Ashley, do you do automatic, you get hundreds of followers. Do you do an auto message?
I do not. Instagram prompts me almost every day to set up auto replies for FAQs, but I refuse to do it. I also don't welcome people as soon as they come. I don't do the practice that Allison does, but what I do routinely is the first time someone sends me a DM, it'll go to my requests folder. And when I reply to them the first time, I will just hold down the little microphone and send them a voice memo. Super personal. I'll be like, hey, Jake, that's a great question. I have the link for that on my links. The highlight, my story highlights called links. Let me know if you're not able to find it. So I say their name, and also I type on my phone with my right index finger every single letter. So by noon every day, my finger is quite tired. So the voice memo is easier and quicker for me, and a really nice touch point with my audience member.
And Chrissy has a follow-up question for that in the chat. What if their Instagram is private? Do you still message them? With Instagram, if somebody's profile is private, unless I have met them in person at a recent event and I know that's who they are, I don't follow them back because I assume they don't want a stranger to follow them back. That's really the only reason to make your Instagram private is you don't want strangers to follow you. And if I don't recognize the name, I'm not a stranger. And Louise has another Instagram question in the chat. How do you deal with all the random dude fake profiles that follow you? Do you block them? Do you remove them? How can you tell if an account is probably fake? If a dude has way more following than followers, that's a sign, especially if all their feed is photogenic pictures of themselves. Yeah, absolutely. Or lots of numbers in the name, an aggressively American name that is often two first names like John Mark Thomas, that kind of thing. But basically, I just kind of judge them the way I judge anybody else. Oh, I'm interested in following. Oh, I'm not. And I'm automatically generally not interested in bot content. So I just kind of let them sit there until Instagram removes them from my followers, because Instagram purges stuff every now and then. It's not worth my time to go through the effort of making them unfollow or blocking them.
I have received some surprising messages, surprising engagement, and now signups for my paid newsletter from those like, John, Thomas, Matthew, number people who are actually just really private, married, middle-aged dudes who like my content, and their wife does too. So yeah, I don't remove them unless they make a comment that is offensive to me or my audience, because that's the reason that I delete a lot of the inappropriate messages or comments that come through, because I'm really protective of my audience. Or if they send me a DM that's inappropriate, which happens, touch wood, so seldom, but then I would block them.
Sue has a great question in the chat. My books are in different genres and on different topics, and the last one came out in March 2020. I blog, I'm active on Facebook and Twitter, and a little on Instagram. I do quite a few Zoom events, but the numbers are discouraging. What can I do to get things going? So Sue, we've got some suggestions. Will you also type into the chat, what kind of events are these? Are these workshops? Are they talks? Are they book launches? The number one thing I have found to get people to show up for a Zoom event is to piggyback on somebody else's mailing list. If I teach an event myself, I can maybe get 50 to 100 people at it if I hustle really hard. When I do like an online intensive, I can get 40 people at it, but I'm offering a lot of value. But if I want 300 people to come to a webinar or 500 people to come to a webinar, I do it with Jane Friedman, because Jane has a mailing list of 50,000 people. Or I do it with Creative Nonfiction, who have a mailing list of 20,000 people. And so piggybacking on other people's audience is a lot of help. The other thing is, really make certain that you are offering something to the audience beyond come listen to us, we're interesting. Ashley, do you do live events? How do you get people to turn up for them?
I don't do live events. I am worried that the numbers would be low and then would be discouraging to me or the few people who are there. I communicate with my audience through my email list and through direct messages on Instagram. That way they get me one-on-one. I often will share screenshots of the messages that I have going back and forth between me and an audience member. I always crop the photo off to just show my audience that I do respond to other people. Even though it is time intensive, the connections that I make with people are really strong. So I would say if you're doing a webinar, so webinar readings and webinars, Sue's doing one with international writers on her topic later this morning. I would say, like Allison said, make sure you're offering something to the audience. If someone attends or signs up for the webinar, they will get a PDF of like the top tips for making time for your writing while we're still, the end of year 2 in this pandemic. Something
or
like
even
that.
Stuff like, come here, this writer, because X, come here, Susan Chow, who is writing us from China, and Susan's going to be talking about political activism. And we're also going to tell you the 5 things you can do about free speech activism in your own community. Something that they're showing up for beyond, hey, show up for me, because everybody wants to know what's in it for them. Have a great reading today.
Marisa asks if I get permission from each person before sharing that little convo, that little screenshot. Even though their name is hidden, I do not ask for permission. And I have never had anyone have an issue with it. If it's something pretty private that someone's asking me, that's not something I'm going to feel the urge to share anyway. It's usually just like some fun banter back and forth and showing people that I can take a joke and that I like having a dialogue with my audience. So no, Marisa, I haven't. I think that people are pretty used to in DMs, and if you answer like a story or a story question or a poll sticker in Instagram, that then it will be shared anonymously. So there's sort of a precedent set there, I think, that helps people just flow with it.
We have some Twitter related questions, starting with Samantha, who says, I'm a twice published author, but Instagram makes me cry. I finally hired someone to help with the launch of the new book. I left Facebook for political reasons, because yeah, Facebook is where you find out that Aunt Gracie's a racist. Twitter is the only place I feel comfortable and authentic. Is it possible to focus on one platform successfully, or do I just need to get over it? You don't need to get over it. It is totally possible to be successful on just one platform. Lauren Huff is huge on Twitter, almost no presence on anything else. What's her name? The funny girl from Florida who had her book launch in a 7-Eleven. Enormous on Twitter, almost no presence anywhere else. It's Kristen somebody, I think. I'll dig her up. So yes, you can absolutely focus on just one thing. Ashley, how many platforms are you on? Where do you spend most of your time?
I spend most of my time on Instagram because showing up in my stories and just doing casual check-ins throughout the day is a big part of how I connect with my audience. And I also think a big part of why the algorithm favors my content. If you guys follow me on Instagram, I would love to know, when you open Instagram, how close is my story bubble to the front? Because a lot of people have told me mine is at the front every time, because I post throughout the day. I cross post those things, those videos, to TikTok, and now to my Facebook author page and my Facebook personal profile, because they're allowing real type videos over there. So those are the places I spend the most time. I am so boring on Twitter. If you tag me on Twitter, I probably won't even see it for a week because I don't go there. Whereas Allison, some of my favorite things that Allison has written and that I reshare over on Instagram are her on Twitter. So no, find a place where you are comfortable, and just really work on connecting with people there.
Another Twitter question from Abby, reposting my question since it's way up above. How often should you retweet links to your work, essays, or articles without it coming across as obnoxious? I'm getting new followers daily and they will not necessarily have seen these. And like we said about our episode with not letting everybody know where the link was because our newsletter failed, you gotta kind of be repetitive. I have recently been exploring scheduled posts on Twitter where I will look at, here's a blog somebody else wrote that I'm interested in, or a book review roundup, and I'd like to write a tweet about each of the books in here, each time tagging the place the book review roundup appeared and the author of it and the author of the book. And, or like a blog post I have written and here's a fun quote from it and the link to go read it. I try to lay down a bed of scheduled tweets where 3 times a week I am reposting something that is a past thing. And then I've been scheduling them up to 6 months in advance. So I would say you can probably retweet links to your work once a week per item. And just don't do it every single day. But that's absolutely a way to get content going on your Twitter and have it going on a regular basis. Share your work, share other people's work as well.
And the links are now available for anyone to use in Instagram stories. And a really effective strategy that Tia Levings has been using this week, because she's had some videos that are really getting some good traction talking about her exit from fundamentalist Christianity, and the religious group that she was part of was the same one that Duggars are a part of. So with the Duggar trial, it was timely. This is whenever you can tie your personal story into a current event, do it. You don't just have to wait and then send off, one pitch to a magazine or a newspaper. You can make it happen right in whatever feed on whatever platform you're working on. And what Tia's doing is then she's resharing old posts, either essays she wrote or quotes that are relevant to what she's talking about now, in her stories each day, because each one of her videos is getting more and more. She's in like, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40,000 views for a few of her videos. So she's getting a lot of traffic, I think like triple the normal story views. So she's linking, and you can go to the stickers button. It's the little smiley face that has like the corner pulled down, like it's a sticker being peeled off at the top of your stories after you've made a story slide. And then you can put the link to your article there.
Exactly. Sandy has a Twitter question. Her account was locked or banned for no apparent reason. She submitted an appeal form, but no response. It's been a few weeks. Keep appealing, like once a week, file that appeal again every single week and tweet that you have filed the appeal, tagging Twitter's customer service. Sometimes it does take a while for it to happen. They usually do get to you eventually. And she also points out, on the other hand, my target audience of parents isn't on Twitter, so I'm trying to think of this as a blessing in disguise. And that's a great way to think about it. Think about how else can you connect with your audience? Which brings us to a bookstore question from Miriam, which is that Miriam has written this wonderful graphic novel about her pregnancy and the birth of her twins called Catalog Baby. She's finding that bookstores are shelving it in graphic novels instead of shelving it in women's issues, fertility, parenting, which is really kind of where it belongs. Ashley, you have a lot of insights with independent bookstores. Yeah. Are they ever going to shelve it in two places, or should she focus harder on just getting it moved out of graphic novels and into women's?
They will shelve it in two places if they have multiple copies, but them having more than one or two copies at a time is, even Doylestown Bookshop, they put in an order for like 10 copies of my book last week, even though it sells rapidly. Like they'll only order that much at a time. Bookstores are really careful about shelf space. I would just reach out to the bookstores that you know are carrying the book and make that request. Just say, hi, introduce yourself. I'm the author. Don't know if my book is selling really well. I've heard that when it's moved to, if you can get one bookstore to do it and then actually name them to that other bookstore on the phone, that would be clever. Downingtown Books moved it to the women's and fertility or the family section, and the copies are moving better. So it's like you're helping them move the books off the shelf, rather than you just being an author and for vanity or whatever, asking them to reposition your book.
And I'm guessing that the teenage boys reading the Akira series are not your target audience. So the bookstore is probably going to be glad to put it somewhere else. And I know that, Miriam, you're currently working on your second book. I would say when you choose your categories, make sure that graphic novel is last. Like really focus on one or two women's categories first, and then put graphic novel, because your audience really is mothers, parenting, women, people with uteruses. So it's more important that they discover the content first, and then they go, oh, hey, it's also a graphic novel. I would say very few of them are going to be looking for graphic novel first. Graphic novel is probably a surprise bonus asset of your material.
Mm-hmm. Before I jump to Sandy's question, I had someone ask about what program I use to make graphics in my stories or reshare conversations I have with my audience. I just take a screenshot on my iPhone, crop it, and then upload it. If you go to the stickers, you can type in, like when I'm talking about my members only newsletter, I type in the word members only, and then it gives me this cool animated graphic of those two words. Not every word you type in will be there, but if you type holiday or congratulations or something that's general and very common, then there might be some cool fonts or animated text for that. So just putting that in. Okay, and then to bookstores, we have one about, Sandy's asking about getting books in non-bookstores, like gift shops. My biggest tip would be to send them a copy of the book so they can actually hold it in their hands, because anyone who's curating the collection in a gift shop wants to have a real idea of like where they would fit it. Usually there's not a lot of space. So sending them a book. Inside, I would have a printed sheet that's like a media kit or a sell sheet that talks about how many copies you sold, where you're promoting it, good reviews, and a section about why it fits in their gift shop. Okay.
And here's how you're going to find that gift shop's demographics. You're going to look at where that bookshop is advertising. Are they advertising their store in the local paper? Are they advertising it on Facebook? Are they advertising it in a magazine? Then look at the demographics for those places which have media kits that talk about their demographics, so that you can say to the bookstore, I know you guys advertise in Southern Living and Garden and Gun, and so that's why my cookbook for the opossum you found on the side of the road is going to fit in with your audience, and I think you should take it up. Show that you're familiar with why their customer might want your book.
That is such a good example, Allison. Okay, Linda asks about bookstores. What's the best approach to reaching out to independent bookstores, and who should you contact? She's found that if the book isn't returnable, they don't really want to order it. Do I find that I need to change the discount or returnable policy? Okay.
Yes, yes, you do.
Let's clarify this. If most or all of your sales are going to be through online orders, and you are self-publishing or publishing with a really small press who may set it as not returnable, just put it as non-returnable and then keep the discount, the wholesale discount, low that you are offering to brick and mortar stores, because they're probably not going to order it, and just push online sales to Amazon or Barnes and Noble. If you want bookstores to carry your book, you have to have it discounted at 55%. And then that means the bookstore will get at least 40% discount, and you need to make it returnable. Choose one or the other, because moving the discount up and down and changing your status back and forth is just going to be more of a headache than you need.
I also want to say one thing too, because Ashley had a really key strategy for getting her book into bookstores. She didn't contact the bookstore. She contacted the readers and said, order my book from this particular bookstore if you want a signed copy, or order my book from your local independent bookstore. And that's going to be your absolute number one way to get into an independent bookstore, is to get your readers to order the book. The bookstore does not want to take a chance on a book that they have never heard of. They want a book that is going to walk out of their store. And the best way to show them that is by having people order the book.
Andrea asks about the change to links in Instagram. Instagram still does not allow live links on posts or in captions. The only place you can have a live link is in your link in bio. It's when you go into edit profile, it will say website. So then you put in there whatever your link service is, whether you have a specific page on your website. That's what I've just switched to, ashleyrenard.com/links. The trick there, because I used to use Linktree, which is so easy, I had to have my web guy set this up for me, but now I have a pop-up for my mailing list that comes up just when people are looking at my links. And it's driven my signups up in a big way. So it takes a little more planning. You may even have to get someone. I found my web guy on Fiverr. He's fabulous. You may have to invest a little money in someone setting that up for you, but then having the pop-up is like a really big sell. And on Instagram stories, that's the new place. You can go to your stickers, you can put in link, you can paste in the link that you want to use. Don't just type it in, like ashleyrenard.com wouldn't work. It has to have the HTTPS. So copy it from your browser, paste it there. Then you can actually, this is very new, you can give a custom link name. Like you can say, get that PDF here, or this is the link for the pizza crusts, whatever, because sometimes I just share stuff that's helpful to my audience that I have no affiliate code with or things like that, but just something like, I really like my gluten-free pizza crust.
Exactly. Couple of questions about agents and querying. We've got one in advance from Marisa, and then we've got one in the chat from Kelsey. Marisa asks, which is easier to sell or get an agent for? A general memoir that's just a story, just a personal journey, or a hybrid memoir that is story plus cultural criticism? Well, the number one thing that makes a book easy to get an agent for is writing it really, really well, regardless of what the actual content is. If you are excellent at the cultural criticism, it's easier than a straight memoir, because you don't have to be as special yourself to speak to a larger issue. There's an automatic audience, there's an automatic takeaway for the reader. If you are a really fantastic, amazing writer, go ahead and just focus on general memoir, because the story and the writing is going to be primarily what sells the book. So it's kind of a 50-50 thing there. But really write the book you need to write, and write it as well as you possibly can. Kelsey asks about querying. For those of us querying publishers directly without an agent, if we get an author, should we work with an agent, a lawyer, or join Authors Guild for a contract review? If you can, leverage your deal to get an agent, because one of the really valuable things that you can do if you get an offer from a smaller publisher is you then query 10 or 15 agents, and in the subject line of the email, you put offer of publication pending, because that lets the agent know, hey, there's a deal in progress here that I could get in on. Do not accept the publisher's offer until you have done this process first, if you are looking for an agent. If it's a small deal, some agents won't be interested. If it's a medium-sized deal, like if it's in the low 5 figures, some agents might be interested. If it's an under 5 figures deal and you wrote a really interesting book that intrigues the agent, they might go ahead and say, yeah, this is a quick win. Let's go ahead and sell this book. Let's get it on board. But if you are otherwise not looking for an agent, just go ahead and use the Authors Guild. They have a lawyer, and joining the Authors Guild is way cheaper than booking your own lawyer. Plus, they have a lawyer who specializes in publishing. And if you don't get an attorney who specializes in publishing, they may have thoughts about contract law that are not in keeping with the way publishing works. Over to you, Ashley.
Okay, Brian asks a question in the chat, and then I'm going to jump to the newsletter question in our advanced questions, Allison, about getting people to sign up. Okay, so Brian says, a publisher has had my manuscript for 3 months. When, how should I ping them? So I am the biggest, I call it nudging. I am the biggest nudger in history of querying. I think I nudged like 85 people in 2 weeks once, and it led to 2 offers. So watch the news or be the news. So set up Google keywords, set up alerts, or just comb through the news 3-4 times a week to see if there are any big stories breaking that relate to one of the topics in your memoir. That's how you can watch the news. You could say this story was picked up by all the major news sites. There are this many, comments on the main story. I think people are interested in this topic. Just want to remind you that my memoir is related to this. Or you can be the news with having something go viral, whether it's a video, whether it's a tweet, whether it's an essay, or something changing about your status as a writer. So if you get a huge, I would say a huge influx in your mailing list, like if you get 5,000 or 10,000 people added to your mailing list since you sent to that publisher, like any kind of big movement, you can say, hey, this is what's changed about my platform or my positioning. What do you think about that manuscript?
Exactly. And that gives them more of an incentive beyond let's just clear it off our plate. It gives them the incentive of, hey, something cool might be happening here. We have a couple of newsletter questions. Kristen asks, I'd love to know tips and tricks to increase my mailing list for my newsletter. Summer asks, can I get folks signed up for my newsletter without offering a freebie, or what kind of freebie should I offer? I have published essays on parenting, but my memoir is on immersion travel and people aren't really traveling right now. What's something I could offer readers that is more relevant? Ashley, how do we get people to hand over their email and sign up for our happy little face in their inbox?
I want to tell you guys that putting a little time into brainstorming a freebie is worth it. I'd never offered a freebie, even though Allison and I give that advice all the time. Middle of October, I knew I was getting ready to start my paid newsletter. I had 5,000 people on my email list. So that was people who had pre-ordered my book, early readers, just like through my videos doing really well on social media. I was so happy with that list. Yesterday, so that was middle of October, yesterday I hit 15,000 people on my email list because I started offering a damn PDF. And I put that call to action. So figure out something. This is what you can ask yourself when you're like, what should my freebie be? Okay, what are the questions you answer the most often in direct messages? What are the things that people say, oh, I really resonate with XYZ in your content? Okay, people come to you for that. And if people are already coming to you for that and you say, hey, sign up at the link in bio to get more of that, whatever that is for you. For Lucy Frost, she did a PDF on things you think you have right, but you're probably getting wrong, like words that you mix up, things like that. Because what Lucy offers is the learning of the day, or like, how the hell did I not know that? Okay. Comedy trivia. So just think, what is something, it doesn't have to be long. It can be a 1-page PDF that you make in PowerPoint if you're Allison, or in Canva if you're me. And then put the call to action everywhere. I've been putting the call to action at the beginning and the end of each of my video in just a little caption box that I put sideways. You guys can see that on my Instagram if you check it out. That is what's making my newsletter go through the roof. So just ask yourself, what could it be? Allison?
I put the call to subscribe to my newsletter everywhere. It's in my email signature. It's in my social media. You can put a call to action in your posts, sign up and download my freebie now, or sign up for my newsletter now. Post content that applies to the conversations you're having in your newsletters. So every time I send a newsletter, there's an Instagram post that ties into it and quotes from the newsletter. There are a couple of tweets that tie into it and quote from the newsletter and have the link to go sign up. The other thing, and it's kind of funny because Rachel's saying, I've been offering a freebie for about a year and have 72 subscribers. So what I'm going to say is change your freebie. If this is not getting you the results you want to get, try something different. And one of the things that really helps is something related to what you do, who you are, but that's a little bit counterintuitive. So Rachel, you're a minister, right, Rachel? I think you're a minister. You're a pastor. You have awesome divinity related stuff.
Thank you for unmuting. What is your freebie that you've been offering for the year?
Right. So my book is more of a historical nonfiction, takes place in the 1970s. So I have a 9-minute audio summary of the book, kind of an audio story. And then I also offer a 7-day memoir challenge, because I had a memoir published, 9 years ago. So
was it 6 Feet Under, or no? We're the last to let you down.
Yeah, we'll be the last to let you down. Yeah.
Or your family ran a funeral home. You were like an undertaker's daughter, right?
Yeah.
I love that title so much. Sorry, I mangled it, but I love it. Okay. So here's the thing, Rachel. Fiction is a little bit trickier. It's a little bit trickier. Now, I would say dive into people who are just curious and love learning, or who really have some sort of tie regionally with where your book is set. Like the books that sell like crazy here in Bucks County are like about the Doylestown Cemetery, like sort of like folklore about Doylestown Cemetery, or like things about the architecture around here that you didn't know. Like it's like Mercer, it's like Hammerstein, like there's a whole bunch of history around here. So those are the kinds of things, like dig into either the regional things or just what are fun facts. Like Jamie McGillan did some work around, she writes historical nonfiction that's based in the Pacific Northwest at like the beginning of the 20th century, end of the 19th century. And she talked about the different kinds of research that are necessary, why research is important in historical nonfiction, and the ways she figures out different things. Because I was curious, how do you know that it costs that much? How do you know that that's how they're cooking? Like what are the resources? Where are the places that you can dig in to find that information? And I think a 9-minute audio story is too much of a commitment for people. They want something that they can skim in 30 seconds or less, and then dig in and spend a few more minutes poking around in. Something simpler like that.
And Jennifer asks, can you offer a variety of freebies for different audiences? Absolutely. Yeah, something that you target writers with, something that you target potential readers of your true crime memoir. If you're using fancy mailing list software, you might want to do A/B testing, or you might want to do segmented sending out, or just alternate what you've got on there. I have like 5 or 6 different email signatures, and I rotate through them based on what I'm selling at the time. You can do the same thing with your freebies. So you have an automatic signature that goes out to everybody unless you change it. And you have one where you're like, oh, I'm responding to this person who I'm pretty sure is more into my true crime, select different signature. I'm responding to this person who I'm pretty sure is more interested in my writing as a whole, change it to this signature. And so that can be a really flexible way to get that done.
And then Martina's saying, dig in needs to be the title of the freebie for the burial related history stuff.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It totally does. I
love that.
Absolutely love that.
So Andrea Askowitz says, you guys kick ass. Thank you for this freebie. So you know, we have built a mailing list of 2,000 writers, like so specific, 2,000 writers who want to build their platforms by offering this valuable information for you every other week for over a year. So you have to, this is kind of an extreme version of what our freebie is, but the relationships then that we make with people are even stronger, because this is, you know, there's more time put into this.
And so make your freebie something that it genuinely fills you with joy to give, something that you're really excited to give away for free and have people really enjoy it. And I think that will be something that will be happy and exciting. And Allison Lane also points out, anything you send out as a reel or a video should have captions, even if there's a video embed in your newsletter. You never know if your video is being watched in a room full of people. Me personally, I'd rather read something than listen to it the vast majority of the time. So my phone is almost always on silent. Plus, it's an accessibility thing. It's really important to make your work as accessible as possible to as wide a range of people as possible. That means captions on your Zooms. That means captions on any video content. That means audio description, image descriptions of anything that's a major image or an information containing image. This is good for you because it also helps your work be searchable, but it's also good for the world. And it's just an excellent practice to be on board with. Stephanie points out her freebie is migraine travel tips, and the upcoming pre-order freebie for her cookbook is 5 bonus recipes. So all of these are great things to do. It doesn't have to be complicated. Let's see.
We have a question from that was submitted in advance. Ashley, you mentioned you had something like 240 beta readers. It's actually 425. How did you get so many beta readers for your book? And then Natalie says, how did you recruit them? And other than telling them to keep it confidential, did you have any online security measures to prevent anyone from copying or sharing any material online? Did anyone do that? The way I started building my mailing list 2 years ago was to offer the first chapter of my book to anyone who shared any of my social media posts for a week. They just had to tag me with the hashtag exactly, LEIGH. And then I would send them the first chapter of my book, which if you read it, it's spicy and short. And then I picked one person at the end of each week to send the whole manuscript to. The buzz built so quickly that within 2 weeks, 425 people had asked me for the full manuscript, and I said yes. Rather than really being true beta readers, they were the beginning of my launch team. I did not lock them in, like, now these are the things I'm going to ask you to do as we get closer to the book being published. I just sent them the book. They said thank you. They gave me feedback. I took some screenshots that made excellent stories and excellent posts. And then when the book was ready for pre-order, those people were a huge number of the people who pre-ordered early and pre-ordered multiple copies. I just sent them it as a Word doc. That's all that I did. I actually got an email and I didn't have anyone share it. Allison says so often that our true fear shouldn't be piracy.
Is not piracy, but obscurity. We are not in danger of piracy. None of us are quite that important yet. Maybe one day we will be. Our enemy is obscurity. We want people to share our work. We want people to get it out there.
Samantha, this is a great idea. And actually, this relates to an email I got today from Story Origin, which is a place where you can put up beta copies or review copies, and they let you do it a chapter at a time and ask people for feedback. When I start writing my next book, which sort of wasn't on my radar, but my psychic told me yesterday, Ashley, it's time. And she also told me, you need to start making some videos. Then it'll be clear how your book should be published. So she knows things. I will start floating bits of the book and then asking people like, is this answering your questions from book one? Or like, would you want more of this or more of that? And people really do get invested. I don't think we need to worry about people sharing, but Story Origin does make sort of a more secure portal where people have to have a login to access those things. So there are some options.
And Stephanie has a great comment, or sorry, Samantha has a great comment too about she saw someone basically post her memoir in tiny fragments on Instagram and it caught on. That is how the lovely woman who wrote the poetry book, Rupi Kaur, that's how Rupi Kaur's work caught on. She was consistent on Instagram and had powerful things to say that appealed to her audience. So that's definitely a way to get people familiar with your voice and interested in your story.
Allison also asked, did I name all 425 beta readers? No, I just said thank you to them when they sent me a DM, and the hundreds of DMs they've each sent me afterwards. They feel really like friends. And I recruited these people when I had 0 following on TikTok, about 1,200 followers on Instagram, and probably 800 Facebook friends. It was just that it works well when the story is a little bit juicy, whether it is fiction or nonfiction. And it was Natalie who wrote a memoir that's about misogyny in the wine industry. It sort of has like a Sex and the City, like Kitchen Confidential vibe. And there is some controversial stuff like kind of outing or blowing the whistle on the misogyny in that whole field, the restaurant and wine field. So I think her letting people know about that, hinting about that on social media, then asking people if they want to be early readers would be the way to start with that.
And a quick follow-up there from Kelly, you can post lines from your unpublished memoir on Instagram that wouldn't count as publishing in some way. It's a real gray area. It's not going to stop a publisher from picking up your work. It's not going to stop a reader from picking up your work. As I have said several times before in this podcast, I have posted a lot of content as blog posts, some of which is also in my book, 7 Drafts. If anyone wants to go back through the Brevity archives and carefully print out each and every one of my blog posts and bind them in a pretty binder, they deserve their free book. It really does not undercut us either with publishers or with audiences to start getting our work out there into the world.
Yeah, and I think that the pendulum has swung back to like agents and editors will look at, oh, you had this essay collection or this memoir is based on this already published essay, this series that you did on Twitter or Instagram, and people loved these. So for them to say, hey, it's a book that we already have social proof, we already have, customer testimonials and analytics on how people respond to this material, makes it easier for them to sell it to the person that then needs to sell it to the next person.
So in just a sec, we are going to answer the number one question that everybody has all the time, and that this time around came from Katie, which is, how do I grow my audience? We're going to give our top tips for that. But before we do, we want to fill you guys in. We have a new thing coming up in February of next year. And Ashley, tell us what it is.
All right, so we get the feedback so often that people leave Writer's Bridge so inspired, but a little overwhelmed, and don't take the action that they were hoping to take right after. So what we're going to do starting February 1st, we're going to be delivering specific exercises via email twice a week. So Mondays and Fridays, you're going to get specific assignments. There'll be like a few variations, like as far as like if you're fiction or nonfiction or what platform you prefer to use. but they will be doable exercises for everyone, so that instead of spending an hour on Writer's Bridge and then not quite knowing what to do, you will be getting, we're calling it the Express Lane newsletter. You will have it delivered to you. So then you can block out in your calendar, okay, I'm going to take 2 15-minute blocks a week to do X, Y, and Z assigned by Ashley and Allison. And what we want to create and prioritize for you is that even if you don't do any other focused platform building during the year, that you've got the basics covered. Okay.
This one is going to be a paid membership program. It's going to cost $19.99 a month or $199 for the whole year. We want to also remind you that the Writer's Bridge is always going to be free. This is not going anywhere. You're not losing out on the main Writer's Bridge. This is an additional bonus for people who would like small, bite-sized things delivered directly to their inbox, where they can accomplish something relatively quickly that feels effective, that feels like, okay, I'm not just like build a platform, but I have a specific task that I would like to do today. You guys are all going to be eligible for the early bird, which will be signing up during January, and then it's going to go live February 1st. And of course, you will get more information. Ashley, anything else you want to add on that before we get into our top tips?
I'm just really excited about this because there are so many things that Allison and I are each learning every week in the way we're expanding our own platforms, the things we're trying, the ways that technology changes so quickly, and the things that we're seeing with our private clients. So having this other offering besides free bridge or, you know, the more premium, expensive working with one of us one-on-one, we want to have this offering where we can really get clear ourselves on what the priorities are, and then deliver that, you know, in like 10 or 15, you know, 5 or 10 minute videos that then you could do the exercise easily afterwards, really actionable advice. So it's nice to have this offering in the middle of the free offering and the more expensive.
So our last top tip for the night, Katie asks, how do I grow my audience? Which is kind of what we're all here for. Not just because we want more people to consume, not just because we want to advertise to people, but because we each have something to say that needs to be heard by a specific group of people. How are we going to deepen our connections with those people? So slow your roll, know that it's a really long process. It doesn't happen in a month. It happens in more like a year or 18 months. You can hustle harder, faster, but honestly, it takes all of us more time than we think to write the actual book too. So it is worth it to slowly and gently build your platform. Pick where you enjoy being active. You don't have to be on every single platform. I have still not sorted out the whole TikTok thing. Pick where you enjoy being active and be regular there, which does not mean you have to be daily there. Just be reasonably regular on the platform that you like the best. And the stuff that you provide, go for content that helps, that entertains, that informs. You can even make a list of places where you regularly find good information and regularly check those for little tidbits that you can quote, that you can respond to if you disagree or want to amplify, that you can endorse. Ashley, what's your top tip for making your audience grow?
My top tip is to know how to check your analytics and then to completely ignore them. To ask yourself each day, how did I do building my platform today? Ask yourself how many real conversations you had. You can have a real conversation in your direct messages. You can have a real conversation in your comment thread, on a comment thread in a Facebook group, on Twitter, a comment thread on someone else's post, okay? How many times did you have a back and forth dialogue with another person that felt enjoyable? So this is like not about like debating or going on to like, you know, really charged political conversations. This is about, unless that is like specifically how you offer your story and your wisdom to the world.
Yeah.
Aim for 5 real conversations a day. And then once we get to February 1st, I'll say, all right, okay, now who's having 15 real conversations a day? Because we really can, even within a short amount of time, we can have those kinds of connections with people. And that's how you ask yourself, did I connect with anyone today?
And remember too, real life conversations also count. Talking to the moms at the pickup line, talking to the people that you're next to in the library, those things count as well. And I want to also do a shout out to Brooke Nicely, because Brooke has a really specific voice on her Twitter. And she's a really good example of someone who is showing up on a regular basis, being really specific about what you offer. Check her out. You're either going to love it and follow her immediately, or you're going to be kind of grossed out and click away pretty fast, which is exactly what you want. You want your content to strongly attract the people who need your voice and to drive away the people who are just not your audience. They're not going to get you. And Brooke does that as beautifully as anyone else I have ever seen on social media. So check her on out.
Hey, Brooke, are you willing to drop your Twitter handle there? I just tried to look for it, but it didn't come up.
Just throw it in the chat.
Drop it in the chat. That would be great.
So our next, she is Brooke Nicely, and that's Knisley. And we are so glad to have you guys here. This is our last meeting for 2021. We are going to be back 2022, January 4th, talking about stop chasing numbers, nurturing your real platform. Feel free to send our email to a writer friend, let them know about the Writer's Bridge, and go ahead and unmute yourselves for a joyful and delightful goodbye. We are so glad to have you. Happy New Year, beautiful
Happy
writers.
New Year. Happy New Year. Happy holidays. Thank you. Thanks, New Year's.